Choosing a Life by ginnyrules27. Chapter 62. And before I get started, I'm on a new microphone, so I'm sorry if the dialogue might be a bit quieter than normal. I'm still trying to figure things out. And Ginny, I've started a coffee account. So if you or anyone listening wants to support me, the link's in the description below. Here we go. Snow stared at the clock, hoping her willpower could be enough to move time itself. She normally didn't mind these weekly meetings, but with Evie so close to her due date, Snow found that the meeting to be torture, primarily because it required everyone's phones to be off. Granted, it was a necessary evil, as they needed to discuss what topics they were going to cover for their broadcast, and they couldn't have anyone be distracted by an incoming text or social media alert. Honestly, Snow was just thankful she hadn't been tasked to cover the onslaught of royal births that seemed to be happening. The reporter who normally covered that segment was now needed two assistants to research all the reports of pregnancies and births. All right, now there doesn't seem to be any new arrivals this week, her editor said with a chuckle. Any news in the sports world? Seems Leilani has gotten back to her pre-pregnancy form, their sports reporter said. There's rumours she might have another child at some point. Snow shook her head. I don't mean to interject, considering it's not my segment, but is that really something we want to speculate on? If she has another child, shouldn't that be her and her husband's business? It'd impact the fantasy raw leagues, though, the sports reporter said. Oh, yes, and heavens forbid those take priority over allowing a family to have some privacy, Snow said, resisting the urge to roll her eyes. Thankfully, she was able to do so, though she wasn't sure how she was able to find the strength. Her editor shook his head, but before he was able to say anything, there was a knock on the door. Sorry to interrupt, Chip Potts' voice called out as he stuck his head in. You're certainly no interruption, Mr. Potts, Snow's editor said. Everyone always made sure to give Chips the utmost respect, due to his connection to the royal family. Snow knew the young man hated what he called everyone kissing up to him. Is everything okay, Chip? Snow asked. Is King Ben having a press conference that we need to attend? Hey, royal events such as those were something she covered. No one could blame her for asking about that. Again, so sorry to interrupt, but I need to borrow Queen Snow, Chip said. Personal business. Why would you need to borrow Snow for a personal matter? One of the other reporters asked, but Snow gasped as she realized why Chip would be asking for her. Evie's in labour, isn't she? Snow asked, looking at Chip. Got it in one. Chip nodded. Snow quickly stood up and gathered up her things. I'm so sorry. I have to. Snow, don't explain. Just go, a reporter told her. I'll have someone cover for your segments for the rest of the week. Go to your stepsister. Snow gave her editor a smile before rushing out of the door with Chip. How far along is she? Snow asked as they made their way out of the door and towards the royal limo Chip had arrived in, courtesy of Ben. Hey, royal limos didn't have to deal with as many pesky traffic laws as regular cars did, and Chip had a feeling that Snow would want to be by Evie's side as quickly as possible. Not quite sure. Amir was the one who called me, Chip told her. Why did Amir call you? Snow asked. He got my number saved in his phone from when he was in school, Chip explained. Plus, Emma had told him that you were likely in your weekly meeting. Apparently Evie tried to call you, but your phone was off. Snow shook her head. We have to have our phones off for that meeting. No exceptions, unfortunately. After this, I'll be having a talk with my editor about amending that policy. Gonna threaten him with your bow and arrow? Chip asked with a grin as the limo drove off. I can neither confirm nor deny that, Snow said. Snow, come on, it's me. You know everything you tell me is off the record. Chip chuckled. Yeah, well, security likely wouldn't allow me to get the bow and arrow into the office. Snow shook her head. How frantic was Amir when he called you? Actually, he seemed pretty calm, Chip said, shaking his head slightly, as he thought back to the phone call between him and Amir. Hello? Chip asked as he answered the phone. Had it been anyone else, he would have questioned how they had his number, but having seen Amir's name flash across his caller ID, Chip knew it was better not to ask. Even if he hadn't given the younger man his phone number years ago, he knew Amir had his ways of getting information. Hey, Chip,
It's Amir. Got a slightly weird ask for you. Amir, you know I have caller ID, right? I know it's you calling. And at this point, in knowing you, slightly weird kinda comes with the territory. What's going on? Evie just called. She's in labor and can't get Snow on the phone. I'm guessing she's in a meeting. Can you?
I'm on it. Don't even have to ask.
You're the best. This isn't going to hurt your reputation in the media, is it? Or what if security stops you?
Amir, I'm their ticket to getting interviews with Ben and Mal. Not to mention the kids when they get older. Remember, I'm the head of Ben's public relations team, even if I also freelance as a videographer. Though, in all honesty, I might drop the freelancing to focus on PR. They want to talk to Ben or Mal? They have to ask me. They're not going to risk angering me. As for my reputation, everyone already thinks I'm odd. This won't change a thing.
You're honestly the best, Chip.
You don't need to keep flattering me. And oh, before you ask, I can watch Ethan and Ava while you're in the waiting room. I have a feeling they're with you.
Actually, they're enjoying time with their Uncle Aziz and Aunt Rachel. They set up it since watching Wyatt and Willow for Robin and William.
Amir said with a small smile.
I really need to thank Evie for her good timing there. Otherwise, I'd have no idea who to contact for childcare.
Well, well, you know, you have my number if you ever need it. I'll let you go so I can call Snow and we can meet you at the hospital. She's at Asclepius General, right?
Sure is. I'll call Daniel so you don't have to worry about that.
Great. See you there. Snow sighed and pulled Chip out of his thoughts.
Everything okay?
Oh, yes, I'm just worried, Snow told him. I don't want anything to go wrong for Evie with this. Childbirth can be challenging in and of itself. If something were to go wrong.
It's not, Chip promised. We're not going to think like that. We're going to manifest a smooth delivery for Evie. She's got Doug by her side, and Amir and Emma have contacted Daniel, so he'll be by his daughter's side as well.
I'll text David. Let him know so he's not worried if he comes home to an empty castle.
Snow said. Oh, was he out running errands?
Chip asked, then shook his head as if he couldn't believe his own question. Since when did royals run errands? Snow chuckled. No, actually. He was meeting with Ben to have a laptop sent to Evie after she gave birth, so Regina could see her grandchild. Granted, he didn't know Evie would be giving birth today, so that laptop might be coming a bit sooner than we thought.
Especially since you know Ben would be happy to anything that would make Evie happy. Chip nodded. Does Evie know about this? I know some mums don't want to see anyone right after giving birth.
We talked with her about it and got the okay before David even requested the meeting.
Good, good.
Chip nodded and then sighed.
Is it weird thinking about Evie having a baby? I mean, I know I'm not exactly the closest to her, but it's like...
I get it, Chip, Snow said with a small smile. Evie was one of the first VKs to come to Oridon. In a way, it's almost like seeing Ben's proclamation come to fruition. The VKs are able to live a better life here than what they had on the Isle, and are able to live in peace without needing to look over their shoulder in fear that they've entered into the wrong territory. They can get married, have kids, things they probably never even imagined they'd be able to do before leaving the Isle. And they wouldn't be able to do it without Ben making the proclamation.
Took the words right out of my mouth, Chip said with a small smile.
Snow smiled and leaned back slightly. The rest of the trip to the hospital went in silence. The only sounds were the clacking of keys as Chip shot off texts to people who needed to be in the know. Before they knew it, they were at the hospital.
I'll give you guys some privacy,
Chip said. Chip, you made the trip here with me. I'm sure Evie would be more than happy to see you, Snow said, gently dragging his arm so they made their way into the hospital. Chip shook his head, but Snow noticed he made no movement to pull from her grasp. If Snow was more cynical, she'd think Chip was only staying to make sure Ben could be informed and have up-to-date knowledge. But Snow knew Chip cared just as much as everyone else. He wouldn't have worked so hard to make sure Snow got here in time if he didn't. The two of them made their way up to the maternity ward where Evie was no doubt in the process of giving birth, judging by David, Amir, and Emma all waiting in the waiting area. I take it Daniel is back there with Evie? Snow asked, not even questioning how her husband had beat her to the hospital. David nodded and got up to embrace his wife.
Daniel and Doug are back there. So far there hasn't been any news, but no news is good news.
I think that's something every parent says, Chip said, and before walking over to pat Amir on the back.
No, Neil?
Emma shook her head. Emma's head shot up and she flushed in realization. I knew I forgot something, she muttered.
Go call him,
Amir said, gently giving his wife's hand a squeeze.
I'm sure he'd rather know and be late than feel like he got left out of the loop.
Emma nodded and quickly walked off to call her brother.
You're truly a lifesaver. You know that?
Amir said as Chip sat down in the spot Emma had vacated. When you're the youngest of 6, you tend to notice things others don't. Chip shrugged. Plus, I'm sure between having to wrangle 2 kids with half your DNA, Emma's exhausted, so I'm not surprised something fell through the cracks. Amir nodded, and then paused.
Hey!
You know you're the one who keeps saying being normal is vastly overrated, Chip said with a raised eyebrow. You can't honestly expect me to not comment on your oldness when I have the chance.
Chip, your motto is growing old is mandatory, growing up is optional. I don't think you have the ground to talk about my oddness.
Touché, my good man. Emir snorted and then shook his head, watching as Neil seemed to race into the room with his wife at his heels. Normally, he'd question how Neil got there so fast. But when the younger prince was married to a hatter from a wonderland, Emir knew it was better not to question things.
You know, I think it's getting to the point the hospital's going to have to make a wing just for us. How many babies have our group had so far?
In total, I have no idea. But it truly feels like you guys are trying to repopulate the earth at times. Chip shook his head. Emir opened his mouth to comment but was cut off by Doug walking out of the double doors.
You know, I expected to see Snow and David, but not the whole family.
Doug shook his head.
Doug, you should know to expect the unexpected when it comes to us.
Emir said.
And you consider Chip family?
He's practically another brother to you and Emir. He's practically another brother to you, Emir. Of course I do. Chip smiled. As touching as that is.
Is Evie okay? Oh, yes. She's had the baby. And they're both healthy and happy, Doug said with a smile. That's great! Neil grinned.
Can we see them?
Snow asked. Doug nodded. The doctors said technically only 3 people in the room, but they're bathing the baby. And Daniel ran off to the bathroom, so there's just so happens to be no one in there at the moment. I think you've spent too much time around the VKs,
Emir teased.
I married a VK. I should hope so,
Doug chuckled, as the group made their way to Evie's room, where they saw the blue-haired princess happily holding a bundle of dark pink blankets. They brought her back while you were sneaking them back here, Evie said, as the baby cooed at the sound of her voice. Oh, she's so precious, Evie. Oh, she's precious, Evie, Snow whispered, not wanting to disturb the baby. What's her name? Evie only smiled and held up a finger, hearing footsteps approach. That has to be Dad, she said. Sorry, Snow, but I promised myself Dad would be the first person to be told the name of the baby. I understand, Snow said with a smile, as Daniel made his way back into the room.
How are you feeling, Lightbeam?
Daniel asked. Just perfect, Dad, Evie said. I'd like to introduce you to your granddaughter, Danielle Elizabeth Klein. Snow wasn't sure if it was a trick of the light, but she was certain she saw Daniel's eyes shine with unshed tears.
Can I hold her?
Daniel asked, his voice catching in his throat. Of course, Dad, Evie said, and gently placed Danielle into his arms. She smiled as she heard her daughter coo, and what Evie could only assume to be delight. Snow smiled as she saw the sight before her, David gently rubbing her back. Did she think this was what her life would be like all those years ago? When Ben announced he was going to bring over VKs from the Isle? Not a chance. But she wouldn't trade it for the world. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. I love that. Oh god, that was beautiful. I like that Chip is sort of the through line of the chapter, so it's a familiar character because we, apart from the last few chapters, we haven't spent too much time with Snow and her family. So it's like incorporating familiarity, which, if that was your intention, Jenny, really good job. And again, I've got a Patreon and Coffee account, so I'm very happy. Thank you for recommending that to me, by the way. Remonetization was a bust again. What can you do? Anyway, I love that Evie named her daughter after Daniel. Danielle is such a pretty name anyway. You guys know the drill. Like, comment, and subscribe. Check out my descriptions. And yeah, remember to have a great day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye, my guys, gals, and albino pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.